Welcome to the Babies in Business Podcast. Join your hosts, Rachel and Avram Gonzales, real-life parents and business partners. Each week on Babies in Business, Rachel and Avram create a space for entrepreneurial parents to find their own way. They'll dive into insights on topics like leadership, efficiency, self-awareness, budgeting, and human psychology as they nurture their family and build their business. Here's your hosts, Avram and Rachel.
Welcome back to the thrilling conclusion of our four-part strategic planning series. This is Rachel's happy place. I'm going to be your MC today. I'm going to be tossing it over to her for insight on turning goals into action steps. Previous 3 episodes, appreciated your feedback. We've had a lot of fun doing this series and taking it one step at a time. If you think about it, this series actually is in itself a demonstration of turning these big ideas into real action steps. What do you think about that?
It's true.
It really is. And we're using a real life example of the podcast to do it. I mean, it's
pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. It's like Inception on podcasting. Enough about that, though. Really what we want to do today is help you understand the methodology, using some examples of taking your goals and breaking them down and putting them into a schedule, a calendar, a system. What are we talking about?
Yeah, whatever that looks like to you.
To make sure they get done.
Some people that may mean reminder app on your phone. Some people that may mean a calendar. Some people that may mean an actual project management system. But I think we said it maybe in the last podcast that we put out, and that is, don't let technology get in the way. So if you're thinking big and you're thinking, oh, I need to institute something that I don't already have, no. Don't institute anything that you don't have. Working off of spreadsheets can work. Working off of calendars, super simple, things that you know, things that you will do. So whatever you're going to keep up with, whatever your systems are right now, use that same thing. Don't think that you need to institute anything else. Biggest thing here first.
So we're going to lay some groundwork. There's a bit of theory behind the action that I think is important to understand before you go delegating something or even doing and performing the tasks yourself. So we're going to break that down. Then we're going to look at the number one most important thing that you need to take into account before you start trying to manage a project or manage a recurring task moving forward. And then we're going to finish by looking at some specific examples of our podcast and what goes into creating it from start to finish. We're going to pull those examples out, and then we're going to get Rachel to chime in here and talk about specifically what we did that allowed those things to be effective, and maybe some of the things that we maybe started in the wrong direction that we fixed. And I think by sharing those examples, this can help you understand what is too much detail to put into your project management, how you delegate to somebody else on your team or yourself, and also what is not enough. Because I think a lot of times with project management, and we're using that term kind of ambiguously as well, these are the 2 camps that you fall into where things don't happen. They don't get done. Right? If there's too much detail behind the plan, it doesn't happen.
Right.
And if there's not enough to support what's actually going on, the people that are involved don't know what to do or never get started.
For sure.
I mean, both these things are big problems.
Yeah, and I think that, and when we do anything in our business, we really focus on really the thing that we're doing, less about who is doing something wrong or right or whatever. Look at that process and figure out what is or is not working and then move from there. And I think that's really important to keep in mind, that when you run into a problem, it isn't necessarily like pointing fingers isn't going to help, but looking at what broke down. And then you can find those solutions. And going over some of this is going to help you with that, because really, when you're delegating, you do take some responsibility of making sure that if you say, order me some pens, and you give no detail about what those pens look like.
Or what it's for.
What it's for, what they look like, when you need them, any of those details, all of those are so important. What is your price range even? You're going to have a lot of questions bounce right back to you. And that could feel like failure to you because you got a question back and it didn't get done. And then you might even have the thought of, well, why don't I just do it myself? So a lot of this is going to help with that.
I think you're right. The other thing that's funny about this is you learn so much about your process by just doing it.
Yes.
There's only so much theory and thinking about it that you can put into play. Really, we've mentioned this one before too, done is better than perfect. You get started with something, and then as Rachel mentioned, there's a lot of feedback that you inherently get. Let's touch on these two ends of the pendulum swing that are important. It's the ambiguity.
Yeah.
These two things really stop people from taking action. They stop people from executing the plan. First is ambiguity. Second one is too much detail. Let's start with ambiguity. Can you talk to me about what happens when you're too ambiguous, or what are things that people forget to include that makes tasks too ambiguous for team members to accomplish?
Sure, absolutely. So, well, what ambiguous can look like is no due date, no details.
Like the pens.
Yeah, like the pens. Like you have no due date, so they don't know that you need it for a meeting on Friday. They're going to fail at that task. No details. Well, you didn't tell them that you like gel pens as opposed to a pencil. Maybe you prefer the little clicker pencil thingy. Whatever that is, you have those details in your head, but you didn't actually tell them that. So that makes it ambiguous. So you're actually setting yourself up for failure because no matter what they do, it's not going to meet the details that you didn't put in. Also, too many tasks. Maybe you've put so many things in to this one task, this one line item that you need them to do, but it should maybe be broken down into like 5.
Or like one of the things that you see as one step actually should be broken into 2 or more.
Correct. And there's a couple of things that help you know if that task is needing to be broken up. If it's getting switched to another person, it definitely is someone else's task. So you got to break those up. And then what does that create? If you have an ambiguous task and it includes some of these things, they're not going to be confident to get this done. And you're going to get frustrated. And also, no clear outcome. Like, if they don't know what accomplishment looks like, they will not accomplish it. And that can also lead to lack of clarity, frustration on both parts, and then in the end, just failure. And that doesn't help anybody.
I think the outcome piece with the pen example you brought up is really good.
Yeah.
So if they know what the pen is for,
right,
and they know when the pen is going to be needed,
right,
those two things create a lot of the framework for clarity for people to be successful.
Yeah. So what would an ambiguous task look like for me having you order a pen? Okay, Avram, I need you to order me a pen, and I need
you to order me a pen?
You know what? I just need a pen. Yeah, I just need a pen. Get it to me, and I'd like it to be in my office when you get it. Right. So I avoided telling you when to get it to me. I just told you, bring it to my office when it's there, and I told you a pen. So then I'm going in and I'm looking, and one pen, that cost a lot. I don't have a price range, none of this. But if I was going to turn that on its head and give you a really good detail, it would look something like this. Hey, I need some pens. I'd like a pen, but it can be a set of pens. I would like it to be a really nice pen. My price range is $50. I need it by Friday, and I would like it to be any color other than blue. I need blue and red, maybe. I don't want blue and red. So green and black would work. I'm telling you these details. And then you also know that my price range, you know when I need it, and you know the color. So you have enough information that you can make that good decision. I didn't tell you gel or what is the other option, I'm not sure. But you know some more details. So that could give you more success. And you could feel confident in that.
Absolutely. If you swing to the other end of the pendulum, we have too much detail.
Correct.
Right? So I think an example of this would be if you told people in that process of ordering or getting those pens to update you at every step.
Right. Or like it has to be this specific brand. A specific brand is okay, but if it's going to be a specific brand, and then you're going to say, well, it's going to be this pen, and I want it to be fine point, and I want it to be black, and I want it to have gold lettering on the outside, or this gold little pen thingy that hooks onto your paper, whatever that clip is called. You can have way too much detail. But I think that the pen is a little bit harder to make that too much of a detail kind of thing, because who would overthink ordering a pen?
But I think it
it
illustrates the ridiculousness that sometimes bosses or managers make when they're delegating something, is they tell them, because maybe somebody screwed up before.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons that are usually the person delegating's fault.
Sure.
But they might then think and assume, well, they need all the detail because the last time they failed at this. So now they're going to give all the detail. When you get that pen, I want you to get in your car. I want you to turn it on. Then I want you to drive to the Staples over here, not the one over there. Then I want you to go to this aisle. Aisle number 3 usually has them, not aisle number 4. And you're getting all this detail. Wouldn't that be absurd?
That would be absurd, for sure.
But sometimes people, when they're telling somebody to do something, they're giving them all of this level of detail.
That's true. We do overcomplicate things.
Right? And I think that creates a lot of problems. We've seen this when we have had too much detail in our project management systems.
Yeah.
Too many steps. People stop using it because there's 13 things I do in this. Well, can't I just click like I did the thing?
Correct. Well, and then I think that also goes back to, work with what works and then move forward after you've tested the process. So we'll just talk about a project management system. So maybe you've gotten this really fancy schmancy project management system and you've started using it, but it's not really been super effective or efficient in getting what you're wanting out of it. We had started with project management system and it was just so complicated, and I felt like it would bring clarity and visibility to people, but it just made things more complicated and complex. And so what I do is I just manage everything on a spreadsheet. Now, that may seem really elementary to some people, but if it works, keep doing it. If it doesn't work, look for solutions. Plain and simple. So in the example of project management system, it is important that we don't tell them to get in their car and drive to the specific Staples and all these different things that really don't actually have any bearing on whether we get pens or not.
None. Or why we're getting them. Is it a client gift, or is it for a presentation, or is it just to use around the office?
Exactly. Yeah.
Sometimes those just 2 or 3 things can be all that somebody needs to then use their brain to come up with the ideal situation on their own.
Right.
Sometimes you can give too much detail and you get
Creativity.
in the creativity, too much detail, you actually end up stifling people's creativity, getting something that's subpar.
Well, and I think you get creativity and confidence when you actually give it to you. Here we are learning how to potty train Lincoln. And in one of the books that I was reading, it's talking about how when you bring confidence to the situation and you know that the baby can do it, that they're going to be able to feel that energy. But if you also have doubt in your mind and you're like, well, I'm not sure if they're ready yet, I'm not sure, they catch on to that. They really do sense that. And it's the same with people that we work with. Mm-hmm. If they know or sense that we are not sure about their capability, that's really important because they sense it. And yikes. I mean, I don't think there's anything worse than knowing that someone's given you something to do and they know you're going to fail and you have given them no reason to think that, so that just tanks your confidence. So we have to allow them that room to have that confidence.
Building a business while raising a family can be tough to juggle for any entrepreneur. Knowing where to focus and how to spend your limited time is critical to your success. That's why Babies in Business has produced and made available a fantastic audio resource for you. It's titled 5 Key Focus Areas to Build a Profitable Business Without Burnout. During this short training, Rachel and Avram peel back the curtain on their secrets to building a business that serves your family, your dreams, and beyond. To download your free copy of the 5 Key Focus Areas, go to babiesandbiz.com/download. Again, that's babiesandbiz.com/download to get your free copy. We hope you enjoy. Now, back to the podcast.
I think that's important. So these are the two ways that it can go really wrong.
Yeah.
Putting your action steps into play.
Right.
Too ambiguous or too detailed.
Yep.
We have a very funny story on this podcast. I'm going to reference episode 17. It's called "Who's to Blame?" A 6-pound situation gone sideways. It's a hysterical story about how I missed an important step of something that Rachel delegated to me that ended up with some very questionable beans cooked for dinner. All right? Great episode. I'll put that in the show notes. Next thing that we wanted to talk about here is, as I pull this up on my screen, we do have some notes that we're following along with right here. The most important piece to consider before you start adding everything into the schedule to accomplish your goals.
Yeah.
And that is an clear understanding of the time it takes to execute and the deadline for when it should be executed and be done. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So project management is actually really priority management. If you are not managing things in priority order, you're going to fail at every turn, probably every single day, and multiple times, because when we do this podcast, there are 7 steps to it, to promoting and actually getting it up and live for the podcast. So that's a lot of stuff to go through. So if you're not aware of when you want it to come out, when you want all of the other things to air, then you can't actually work backwards to when you need to start all of these other details. And you will run into those deadlines every single week or however often you're doing that. So making sure that, like what we talk about, and I'm sure that we heard this somewhere, is starting with the end in mind. You start with those deadlines. You start with that, and then you determine priorities based off of that. The number one most important thing is that. And then knowing how much time a task takes. If you're not reasonable about the time that the task takes, then you're really going to fail, because if producing one podcast takes, we'll say 2 weeks, based on the time that it takes to transfer to another person, time that it takes to go through all steps and transfer from person to person, and you don't give that much time, then you're really shortcutting things, and you're just going to create stress and burnout.
Yeah, a lot of stress, a lot of pressure on people that are involved in the process when you start shortening it and taking shortcuts. Yeah.
And and with podcasts, we love talking about these things, and it's very much a passion project. And when it gets bogged down with feeling frustrated and under the gun for the timelines, that's really not fun anymore. So we want to make sure that we're making sure that we plan for all of the things that are coming up. And this really does apply to business. We're using the podcast as the example to demonstrate what we're doing and our thought process and what we go through to do all of this. But think about it in your business, what you are doing. When you go over what did and didn't work, maybe taking a time audit of how long a task takes. That might be helpful. Maybe you don't know how long it takes, and that's why you've been failing to meet deadlines. Things like that.
Yeah, and if you haven't checked out the previous episode to this, I forget the name of it, but about 2 episodes ago, we talk a lot about that. One of the important things is knowing your process map. We're going to talk about that. We're going to touch on that again here, and the different amounts of time that it takes to accomplish each step. So let's talk about that now. We're gonna take theory and put it into action. I'm gonna briefly go over our process to produce a podcast start to finish. There are 7 steps. Then we're gonna highlight 2 sections of these 7 steps where I think we're gonna be able to share some tools and ideas with you that you can apply to your business and just run to the bank with. Okay. So when we create a podcast start to finish, we usually need, at a minimum, at least 3 to 4 days. Like if we had to go really, really zippy from start to finish, 3 to 4 days, ideally, the whole process start to finish is like 2 to 3 weeks, even to 4 weeks when we do it in the ideal fashion. So here are the 7 steps. Step number 1, ideation. What are the things that we could talk about? And kind of coming up with those and brainstorming them. Maybe there's some research that's attached to that. Yeah. Step number 2, outlining the episodes. So we don't just wing it every time we get on here. We have an idea or some main key points that we want to hit on. And that involves both me and Rachel. Ideation sometimes is just me, oftentimes is both of us. Step number 3 is the actual recording of the podcast. Of course, that's both Rachel and I. Step number 4 is the editing of the process. That's the wonderful Kim, who is taking care of the editing of it so that it can actually be uploaded and put places. Step number 5. Did I forget the last one?
5.
Step
No,
number 4
you're
was
right.
editing. Step number 5 is it comes back to me to do the copywriting for the episode and pick out the key clips and things that we want to feature. All right. Step number 6 is the actual media creation of it. So then it goes back to Kim, who takes everything that I just pulled out of the episode and makes the graphics for it, makes the videos for it, all that fun stuff. And then step number 7 is the actual promotion of the podcast. So it's getting it up on the places where you can actually listen to it, the social media that goes out around it, and then both Rachel and I also promoting it from like our personal profiles. Those are the 7 key steps of our podcast production process. And it's important that we line them out that way. And we did that for a very specific reason. We've iterated on this hundreds of times, it feels like at this point. Well, 31 to be exact, all right? 32. Now let's look at some of the areas where the project management side of this has been super important because it switches from one person to another person.
Yeah.
So the first place that we want to talk about is the handoff from recording the podcast to the editing of the podcast. So it's where I think one thing ends and the next one begins that's important.
Yes. And when it goes from one person to another.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. So yeah, after we record, I mean, that's all fine and dandy, but if Kim doesn't know that we've recorded it and it's ready for editing, then we could assume that it's done, and you could go into the next step after that, which is copy, and find that it's not done. You can still do copy, but you'd see, oh, we missed a step. I'm not the next one in line necessarily, so we can't actually go and do the media creation and then do the publishing thereafter because something was missed.
So we've scheduled the time previously for the recording of it. We did
correct.
the recording, and then the last step was letting the next person know
Correct.
it's done. So our part of the process isn't done until that notification has been executed. And so we do that in a couple ways, right?
Yep. Yeah. So right now we manage with spreadsheets.
Yep.
And Kim has her tasks on the spreadsheet, and it gets populated there. And then a link is also put there. Sometimes a link is necessary, sometimes it's not. But with this process, she knows the software that we use, so she just goes there and does the editing. She knows where and how to do those things. She already knows this, so it is a simple task to delegate. It's simply letting her know that it's ready to be delegated or ready to be edited.
So one of the things that has been created is a clear picture of what done means like.
Correct.
For Kim.
Absolutely.
And as we've already demonstrated, a clear picture of what done means for the recording process is we've actually done it. We've delegated it. It is now on the next person's schedule.
Correct.
That next person knows, here are the steps that are involved in this every single time that I do it. And here's the actual files that we want on the other side of that.
Right.
Right. So she takes them all, and there's a basically like a checklist that she goes through, and then boom, now it is done. Right.
And there's a lot of things that go into that to support that. There's Google files and Google folders and different things like where does all of that stuff live? Well, that's already been put together. So she has a lot of support already in place to help her get that done.
So really cool tip for you here before we move into the next example, because I think we've pretty much covered this, is when a person on our team or even ourselves gets a task, gets a task, two things come with it. The description of the actual outcome, what it is, right? And then a supporting document of things that they would need to do it. And
correct.
We could talk all about that, but I think we're just generally trying to give some ideas of where you would start.
Sure, I think that would be too much detail here because really what we're talking about is how do we get from point A to point B and have those people involved in the process feeling successful as well and engaged.
Absolutely. So those are the things that allowed action to be taken here. The next piece we want to talk about in the last example is when it goes from my plate, which is determining what the copy is going to look like for the podcast and the clips and things that are going to be featured. Then it gets transferred back to Kim again for her to create all the media.
Correct. Yeah. So it's really important that from that step, it gets to Kim in a timely manner because she has a lot to do at this point.
Shout out to Kim because lately she's been getting them pretty close to the 11th hour.
We've had a lot of things going on in our household.
We have.
And changing of schedules and all the different things. I'm almost in my 3rd trimester. So that's the last 3 months of the pregnancy, for those of you that don't know that. But there's a lot going on. So yes, she gets it sometimes last minute, and then she has a lot to create. There are media creation graphics for every single thing that she's going to be putting up onto social media. And there's art for the podcast itself, the episode when it goes up onto the podcast player, all these different things. And so she knows what comes out of that. But from the copy to the media creation, it's so important that that be conveyed and that it is complete information. So if you leave things out like the different descriptions that she's going to be putting on these different posts, the copy that goes up top and then the photos, all these different things, if anything is left out, then it makes it so that she has to work harder or she just can't get the thing done. So if it's in the 11th hour, it doesn't get done. So making sure that you also, for copy, have kind of a checklist of what you're looking for. And then once you've done that, then you're able to know, okay, I have provided everything to equal success for Kim. Then Kim is able to go in and really get all the things done. And yeah, shout out to Kim. She really rocks. She gets it up. And it always is excellent. Like we're so pleased with what she creates.
Well, something that happened in the last episode that got published was I forgot to tell her that it was ready, but she already knew episode's coming out in the next day. It's got to be in there. She went, she checked, she found it all. She started putting it together.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I want to highlight something here that we didn't in the previous part that applies just as much here, which is that each of these steps, these 7 steps, it is one line item in somebody's schedule for the week.
Correct.
And that is only possible because of the other things that we put in place that go along with the task.
Yes.
So when I create all the copy and all the stuff to pass over to Kim for step 6, media creation, it's one document.
Correct.
It's one document that she knows how to work with it, what comes out of it. There's no ambiguity about what will come from that single piece.
Correct. Yeah, there's so much support that has gone into the success of that one line item being the name of that task.
Right.
To tell her what to do.
Right. So you're not putting onto you as the project manager.
Yeah.
You're not putting each individual step, and you're not saying, okay, I want you to do these 4 reels and here's the info for each one and do this and that. You're not putting 16 items in her queue.
No way.
It's one because it's one big step and you know about how much time it takes.
Right. Correct. And what's cool, like part of the supporting documents that we've given her is there a training that she's gone through. She's come along with us for these 32 episodes. She's been right there along with us in all of the publications of these. And she has seen the iterations and how things have changed. And things have changed. Things have changed dramatically from the beginning of how we used to do things to now. And she has just gotten better. And we've been able to change the system and the process with her feedback sometimes, with our feedback, different things. So that's the beauty of being able to delegate, not being ambiguous, not having too much detail, having that one line item, having such good training around a certain task that the one line item that says whatever it says, it could say media creation, whatever that thing is, that she knows what that is. And she doesn't need additional explanation. She just needs supporting documents for it. So that's where we've wanted to be with our processes, and that's where we are.
And I think that's where everything comes full circle is you start executing and then you realize there's holes here, inefficiencies here.
Yeah.
You iterate, you make it a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then you keep moving forward. I encourage you to go check us out on social media at Babies and Biz Pod, and then just go scroll down like the Instagram page as an example, and just take a look at where everything started versus where it is now. You know, the level of improvement in the last 31, 32 episodes is pretty staggering when you look at it like that. And in the beginning, it was just use this photo, use this background, put the words on it, go.
And then we're done.
And now it's like we have a single document where there's links to the exact clips that, you know, it's all in one spot. It's
improved so much, both on the process side and on the actual delivery of what is being put up. And I just love what we have that keeps going over and over and over and supports everything that we do. And that is done is better than perfect. So doing something, putting something up, and then being able to see where it can improve after we've started stuff. You know, oftentimes you can get bogged down with just wanting to be perfect right out the gates. And that's just not possible. It's just not possible. So yeah, hopefully this helps. Hopefully as you're listening to this, you are hearing yourself and the issues or problems that you have had or are having in your own business, your own family. Maybe this applies there too. And hopefully you can find some kind of information here that supports your goals in wanting to become better and have those answers. And, you know, we all want to get better at what we're doing.
And we all want to accomplish the goals we've set out. Sometimes we just need some clear action steps in order to get there.
Yeah.
We appreciate you for listening. As mentioned, catch us on social media at Babies and Biz Pod. That's the handle pretty much everywhere. We would love and appreciate any of your 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. That helps new viewers see what they're missing when they see us pop up in their feed and are wondering if they should listen. Your help goes a long way. We appreciate you for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Babies in Business Podcast. Who do you know that would benefit from hearing this episode? Share it with them and post about it on social media. You can find the show notes for this episode, free downloads, and connect with the rest of the community at babiesandbiz.com. We'll see you next time.